Thank you, Don. That was great. I think it was a perfect segue into introducing the speaker today. I've known him for quite a while. And he's been a practitioner of science of mind for nearly 20 years, even before, in fact, learning about science of mind. So welcome. My name is Jon Haass. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Now that is not a few phrases that you want to hear from your captain on a boat or a plane. But here we are on Mayday. But you know, in our lives, we sometimes have things happen to us that are not quite so disastrous, but we want to say something similar because it was originated about 100 years ago. English is really the language of aviation. And boats used to say da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, because they used Morse code, S-O-S, right? Did it, da-da-da, did it. But it doesn't go so well over the airwaves as a pilot, and so the words came from French. Please come help me. Venez m'aider. They just shorten it to Mayday. You do it 3 times, and then after that, you're supposed to say what's going on. So in our lives, if we need a little help, we say, practitioner, practitioner, practitioner. And then you give them the details, and then we don't care. Oh, I have a broken hip, and I need this, and I want that, but I want more of a great life. And then we say, you've already got a great life, and we help them realize that and believe it and know it. So we have tools to help us in our lives. So it's a perfect time to think about this, because if you look out, it says there's some scripture, it says, at a time of distress, the rush of mighty spring waters shall not reach you. You are safe from trouble. So even though trouble comes into our lives, we can know our safety, believe in our safety, and go out, and if we need to, throw a rope out to somebody who can help pull us to shore. Because we don't have to do this alone. That's what we say every Sunday. You don't have to do this alone. There's lots of help out there. So I want to use the Mayday theme in different ways today to talk about the history of this day, as well as to tie it in with what's going on in our lives. So when I was growing up, we used to go and take a May basket, stick it on the front porch, ring the doorbell, and then run away and hide. Usually we'd be giggling. And then the people, we knew they were there. They would come out and they'd be surprised and look around, and sometimes we'd pop out, you know, and say, oh, surprise. Or sometimes we didn't, depending on who it was. And sometimes we take the flowers to somebody special. And of course, if there was already flowers there, you just put them in the bushes and leave yours behind. So it was a special kind of a day. And I don't know that May baskets are really popular anymore, but it brings about a remembrance of simple days back in Casper, Wyoming, which is very similar to here in Prescott. Because on May 1st, you're almost, not totally, but you're almost guaranteed that you can plant. And there won't be a frost or a snow. It does sometimes happen, but at least it won't stick around. It's going to be warm pretty quick, and the plants won't get too damaged. This year, my wisteria, unfortunately, came out too early, and almost all of the purple flowers wilted away, and they're so sad. But don't worry. The theme is, but the leaves are coming out nicely now. So they're happy. Now, May Day has been celebrated for a long time. The Romans first wrote about it, and they, of course, had a goddess for everything, or a god. And the goddess for May Day was Flora, the goddess of spring. And so they called it Floria, this celebration would usually go from April 28th to May 3rd because the Romans really knew how to party. If you were wealthy, then you had lots of food. They used flowers to celebrate. And I found this great image, but I didn't get it to clay in time. This was from the 1st century Common Era and was found on a fresco. Luckily survived all these years because of a disaster, because it was very near Pompeii. And so the colorful story of a maiden gathering flowers was saved by a disaster for all these years. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. So that's a fresco that was found there. Now, Diane helped us out to remind me that this month's theme is emotions. Luckily, I read that too. And so one of the things that we know about is emotions come to us and they leave us. They're like thoughts or clouds. They come along, and as long as we don't pay too much attention to them and keep them going by saying, man, I'm really angry, they'll go away. But if you say, you know, I'm really angry again, I'm going to stay angry. I'm going to keep stirring up this emotion until I can't let it go because this is an important emotion. But there was a fellow named Rumi who I really like, and he had a perspective about emotions because he said that this being human is a guest house, and those guests that come, like our thoughts and our emotions, are meant to give us guidance. She called it the GPS this morning. Or maybe that was Reverend Viljoen that used that analogy. So the emotions help guide us, but they're not meant to stay there with you. So this is what Rumi said. He said, this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep out your house, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Each emotion has been sent as a guide from beyond. So, we shouldn't worry about them. In fact, worry, as sometimes is said, is a prayer for what we don't want. Right? So why not pray for what we do want rather than those things we don't want? And emotions certainly are those things that if it's a great emotion, yay, try and keep it around as long as you can. But if it's not, like Esther Hicks says, just move up the ladder. Go to the next higher emotion and the next higher emotion until you get to that point. Maybe some of us have felt it. It's just boredom. Hey, man, nothing's going on. Well, that's good because that means you're almost to the positive side of the spectrum, and you can keep climbing up and up until you get to joy and elation and just celebration, because that's what life's all about. Celebration, and especially on a great day like May Day. So Ernest Holmes wrote, "We are speaking of the power that sustains life, of the intelligence that directs it, and the wisdom that governs it. We are speaking of love, the warmth and color which awakes to consciousness in our being." The color. So it's the colors, the tastes, the sensations. Those are the things that life are made up of. And part of that are those emotions. They color our lives. It's sort of like the spices that we cook with. You don't want to just use salt and pepper all the time. Sometimes you need a little thyme. Sometimes you need a little basil. You know, a little of this, a little of that. Not too much, because it can overwhelm the food. But you need a little spice in life, and emotions, in a sense, provide a little spice in life. So treat them as the guests that they are. Now, in another part of the globe, the Celts celebrated May 1st, but they called it Beltane. It's a cross-quarter day. That means it's halfway between the vernal equinox and the summer solstice. And so it's a great time because up in Scotland, it was still pretty cold, like in Wyoming. And they said, you know what, we're going to light some bonfires, and we're going to jump around the bonfires. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to try and entice our animals to jump over it too, and then that will make them fertile. And so we'll have lots of little sheep and little cows and goats and whatever they raised, right? This was their idea. So it was a party that they did, and like the Romans, they liked to party. So it went on for an entire day, and it was a great thing. Now, today, you probably did this as a kid. I know we did. We took out the old tetherball pole, and we took crepe paper, and then you have lots of crepe paper. You tape it up to the top, and then everyone gets to have a piece of it, and then we sing and dance around the maypole, right? But crepe paper is not very strong, so it falls off, and then you go racing around the playground, holding on to that crepe paper. It's flinging behind you in the wind, and it's a great time until they call you in from playground session, and then you have to go back to class. But that was a great time, wasn't it? But every day is different. Every day is different, but every day is an opportunity to enjoy whatever's going on. And outside right now, we're enjoying a little bit of breeze, but great sunshine, nice weather. But we're not in this alone. And about 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, some people said May Day should be rebranded. All this partying is not really paying attention to how hard some people work. So it was unions or People's Day. So they celebrated for all of the hard work. And of course, people wanted to remember that maybe this summer I'm going to get a vacation finally. I'm not going to have to work all year round. Maybe I won't have to work 12 hours a day. Because remember, work was different 100 years ago than it is today. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers making life easier. We didn't have Zoom or all of the things like Facebook Live. Hello out there in the world. Albert Einstein was reminded that because he says every day he reminds himself that his life depends on the labors of other people and that he must exert himself in order to give in the same measure that he receives. So that's kind of a good homily, if you will. It's give as you shall receive. And it goes right in line with that labor union, people's workers kind of a theme. Now, more recently, some governments had taken over and said May Day should be a time to express our power. And they have these big parades, and they show off the marching people and maybe some rockets. And it really changed the tone, once again, of what May Day means. So it shows that we can have the same day, call it the same thing, the 1st of May, and have it mean something completely different by our words and our actions. So it means that our lives can be completely different depending on the way we think about it and the way we act on it. So that's what we teach here as part of our spiritual tools. So now this being the first Sunday, you know what that means, right? First Sunday of the month. We're going to celebrate Birthday Sunday. And birthdays are particularly nice as a celebration. Why? Because it's new life. Something new is being born. Something new is possible. So on your birthday, or I like to take the whole month personally, my birth month, then that's a great opportunity to kind of open up to what's possible in life, what you want more of, and start going after it. Start making it happen. So I have this little thing. It says, this is from Some Days, because every day is different, of course. Yet it can seem to get lost in the cycle of sleep, wake, work, eat, do over, sleep, work. When things slow down, however, we can notice the changes, and they're magnified. So the opportunity to choose something new can feel daunting. But on the other hand, if we don't try and do something new, sleep, work, eat, it's not a life you've lived. It's you've lived the same day over and over for a lot of years. Now, who wants that? None of us, because we know better, right? We have the spiritual tools to make our lives better and make the world better while we're doing it. Because after all, if our lives feel better, somehow the world looks a lot nicer. If I smile at people, lo and behold, they tend to smile back. That makes for a happier world. So some days are more intentional, like a day like May Day. So it's said that Jesus was so powerful because he had no doubt that he was connected. And so when he said a prayer, or he said this, stand up, he knew it was going to happen. So in our lives, if we can use our emotions and be so positive that we know that when we make our prayer, there's no doubt in our minds. It's already done. That's why we say, and so it is. We don't say, and I hope it's going to work. No. No, we put our thoughts right into it and our emotions into it. Last week, we learned a little more about affirmative prayer when we did a little exercise. But when I first learned about religious science, and I was at the East Bay Church of Religious Science. That's what it was called before they rebranded it as Centers for Spiritual Living. And it was the Right Reverend Eloise Oliver who was speaking. It was her church. And she treated it as a big family. And she said, prayer is simple. We call it 5 steps, but you can do it in a lot less. You can just say thank you. But she put up her hand and she said, 5 steps. God is, I am, I know, thank you, goodbye. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to step down here and take these ideas into prayer so that we can anchor these thoughts of this May Day, the 1st of May, a wonderful day, Beltane, Floria, all of that. So, right now, I recognize and know that there's only one power, one presence, one perfect, powerful presence that is all there is. There is no other thing. And since this thing is everywhere and every when, then we call it by any name. It doesn't matter what you call it. Because that power and presence is here. It's available. It's now. And since it's now and everywhere, it's right where I am, right where you are. We are a part of and connected to that power at all times. And because of that, we can use it. And so I know that there is a world that is becoming ever more wonderful. As the days continue to get longer, as the air warms up, as the greenery around us fills out, as people become more aware that we all live on this tiny dot called a planet, and that the vastness of all that is surrounds us, supports us, guides us, directs us, is us. So since that's the very truth, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the knowing. I'm grateful for the possibilities that that brings about. And I give thanks. And so, knowing that these words are already done, I release them into love and law, knowing it's already done. And we can anchor it by saying, and so it is. Please rise